Welcome to Roary's Roundtable, an opportunity to talk the game of football with our pal Roary, presented by University of Michigan Credit Union. My name is Coach Chris.
Hi, I'm Coach Pat.
And we're back at it. Roary's in front of his whiteboard once again, Professor Roary. He's been spending a lot of time during this quarantine time in the classroom, watching game film and studying the game of football. And you know what? We thought it was a great opportunity to be able to provide a little education, if you will, to children, parents, and coaches on the basics of the game of football. Now, we're going to talk, Pat, a position that's near and dear to your heart, the offensive line once again. And we're going to talk right now about pass protection principles. Sounds very complicated, but our offensive line's got to be able to protect Matthew Stafford when he drops back to pass, whether he's under center or in the shotgun. So we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I'll be upfront, okay? When it comes to playing offensive line play, most linemen enjoy run blocking more, right? They just like to go out there and maul that defender, and pass blocking can be a little bit tricky. But I tell you what, pass blocking is really important if you want to have a really well-balanced offense and really a successful football team. So it's definitely an important topic. So I think we should spend a little bit of time here today talking about some of the basics when it comes to protecting the quarterback.
Let's head to class. Professor Roary, are you ready? Let's get it going. Pass protection principles. Coach Pat, we'll turn it over to you.
All right. So just to review, in the middle there, we have our center. Next to the center are two guards. And then we have our two tackles next to the two guards. So when it comes to pass protection, there's a few things that we need to kind of think about before the play even starts, Rory. The first thing that comes to mind is understanding what we call the launch point. Okay, now a launch point for the quarterback is the term for where the quarterback is supposed to throw the football. Okay, so a lot of times when we talk about a pass play from a quarterback side of things, we think of either a 3-step drop or a 5-step drop. And that kind of gives us an understanding of where that launch point is at. Okay, so Rory, if the play is a 3-step drop, that tells us as offensive linemen that quarterback's only going to take 3 steps backwards, all right, in his drop back, and then he's throwing the football. So that tells us he's closer to the line of scrimmage, okay, which also tells us that we need to be really what we call firm in our pass protection, meaning we can't let those defensive linemen or linebackers push us back into the backfield. Otherwise, that quarterback's not going to have anywhere to throw. Okay, Matthew Stafford doesn't like that. All right, so if it's a 5-step drop, it tells us that quarterback's going to drop a little bit further back into the backfield to step up into what we call a pocket. Now, what is a pocket? You might hear that term on TV when you're watching football games or coaches talk about it. A pocket is what we call the launch point. Okay, same kind of concept where the quarterback steps up into an area to be able to deliver a clean pass. Okay, so it's important that we keep a clean pocket as an offensive lineman. Okay, so a few things that we can think about. All right, as you might hear offensive tackles be considered on an island, all right, on an island. Usually those guys, offensive tackles, are protecting they're blocking one defender, okay? It's kind of a one-on-one pass protection. Usually it's an edge defender, an edge rush. Yeah, in your case there, Rory, you circled 2 defensive ends, all right? So those guys are really fast. They're what we used to call heat-seeking missiles coming up the field trying to get to the quarterback, okay? So offensive linemen, all right, we've got to make sure we get into a really good pass set. And what they want to do is they want to try to protect inside out, meaning you can't let that defender cross your face, okay? You can't let that guy get across your face and come inside. That's the fastest way to the quarterback, right, Rory, for that defensive end? And we don't want that, all right? So what we do is we teach tackles to protect inside out. So you want to protect that inside shoulder of the defensive end, all right, work his way up the field, Rory, right? Yeah, so as Rory's drawing here, if if those defensive ends go up the field, okay, Rory, that tells your quarterback he's going to be able to step up into the pocket, okay? Yeah, you want to draw like a little area, like a triangle, Rory, to kind of show where the pocket might be.
You're asking Rory to know some geometry if you say triangle.
Well, you know, Coach Chris, it's funny you mentioned that because playing offensive line, you need to understand angles, right? And angles, as we know, is geometry. So we got to, Rory, you got to know your geometry, okay? So that if we want to draw a triangle to kind of highlight what we would call the pocket, that's the safe zone, or that's what should be the safe zone for the quarterback. So if those defensive ends rush way up the field, all right, that quarterback's going to step up into that safe zone, okay, and be able to hopefully make a clean throw. Now, what's really important for our interior offensive linemen, okay, centers and our two guards. Now, they have the advantage of usually being able to work together. Okay, now we said offensive tackles, they're on an island, right? They're usually by themselves unless you have some help from a tight end or maybe a running back that can help you out. But usually those guys are on their own. Okay, now centers and guards are able to work together. Okay, they're able to help each other out. And another thing I should have mentioned at the very, very beginning is just how important communication is. Okay, so understanding where a quarterback is going to launch the ball and the launch point, but also being able to communicate your calls, Rory. You got to be able to talk, right, Rory? I know that's a little tricky. Not necessarily talk, but communicate, okay? Because sometimes it's really loud inside those stadiums and you can't always hear, okay? So the centers and the the center and the two guards can work together to block hopefully whatever's left in the middle there, okay? Now, sometimes defenses draw up tricky plays where they got linebackers blitzing and the nose tackle and the tackle, they loop and they cross and they do all sorts of things. Again, that's why you got to be able to communicate and work together. But it's their job, all right, in the middle of the pass protection to be firm. Okay, that's a huge word. That's a very key word, to make sure that they're firm. All right, and that they don't give up penetration, all right, to the tackles and anybody else coming through those A gaps or B gaps, okay? Because if you get penetration up the middle, all right, and that quarterback goes to step up into the middle, all right, you got big problems, right, Rory? Yeah. All right, that's where deflected passes can happen. That's where, strip sacks, things like that can happen, right? We don't want that. We don't want that as offensive line. Okay, so tackles, you're on the island, all right, you're protecting the outsides. Center guards, all right, you guys are working together to be firm at the line of scrimmage to create a nice pocket, all right, for your quarterback to step up to. Okay, now those are just some basics. There's a lot of different ways that you can draw up protections, just like you can scheme different plays on offense in the run game, right? You can scheme different ways to protect the quarterback as well. A couple of different ways that you can do that is play action. Okay, now play action, all right, is when the quarterback fakes some type of a handoff, all right, to give the defense a look that it might be a run, all right? That kind of slows up the defensive guys a little bit, okay? And then as an offensive lineman, you can, what we say, sell the run, all right? You can sell that it's going to be a run, but when really it's a pass. You're trying to trick the defense, okay? So that helps slow the defense up a little bit. That's one way that you can protect the quarterback. Another way is what we used to call, or what you can call a full slide. All right, it's when all five linemen are working together and they slide either to the right to protect the gap to their right, or they slide to the left to protect the gap to the left. Okay, so those are just a couple of different ways that you can work together as offensive linemen to protect the quarterback.
You know what? You bring that up, and I see that nice triangle there. But one of the things I was thinking about from a quarterback's perspective, I know we're talking about offensive line, but they have to work hand in hand together, is that quarterback oftentimes, depending upon if it's a 3-step or a 5-step drop, has to have a clock in his head to be able to say, I've got to get this ball off in certain number of seconds. And when we're talking seconds, we're not talking minutes. We're talking 2 point whatever seconds, or if it, and I'm sure an offensive line has to think in terms of that as well. Is that correct?
That's true. Although we tried to always make things simpler on linemen, and you just block to the whistle, right? Block through the whistle sometimes. Okay, so you're not sitting there counting seconds in your head. But you're right, Coach. I mean, you got to be able to protect the protect long enough for the quarterback to get the pass off. But as offensive linemen, if you think about blocking until you hear that referee's whistle, all right, you're going to be in really good shape. So you're just trying your hardest to block that defender. Roary's saying 3 seconds and bail for that quarterback. Okay, that's Roary's advice there for quarterbacks. 3 seconds, you get out of that pocket and you try to make something happen. But yeah, that was the biggest thing, is just, making sure that you block through the whistle as an offensive lineman.
Sure. 3 seconds doesn't seem like 4 at the most. If you get 4 seconds pass protection wise, that offensive line's doing an outstanding job. And if the quarterback's not getting the ball out in 4 seconds, guess what? Probably the defensive back secondary on the opposition is doing a great job of covering, or we as a wide receiver crew are not flat out getting open. And so that's what's neat about the pass protection principles that you're talking about. There's so many layers of involvement for a play to be successful, but it starts always up front.
Yeah, and there's so much communication, teamwork that goes into it, and honestly, there's a lot of trust, right? You have to be able to trust the people around you to do their jobs. As a quarterback, I mean, you're basically turning your back to a defender that's trying to sack you. All right. Take Matthew Stafford, for example. He's right-handed, right? So when he takes his drop back, he can't see what's happening back behind him. So if you look at Roary's board here, right, that defensive end to Roary's left, that's what we call his blind side. Matthew Stafford can't see that way. So that's why somebody like Taylor Decker, who's playing left tackle, is so important to protect Matthew Stafford's blind side. There's a lot of trust those guys have to develop in one another and depend on one another. Okay? So a lot goes into it, other than just dropping back there and throwing it up to Marvin Jones or whoever else out there, Kenny Galladay. There's a lot of work that goes into it in the off season, a lot of repetition. That the entire offense has to work together, but particularly those 5 guys, making sure that they set that pocket and protect for the quarterback to get the ball off.
Thanks for sharing, Coach Pat. Thanks for sharing, Professor Roary. Pass protection principles, such an important, vital part of the success of any offense. Well, you know what? Until next time with Professor Roary, my name is Coach Chris.
I'm Coach Pat.
Thank you for joining us here on Roary's Roundtable. Thanks, Roary.